Last time we had to shut down a reactor for the warden, but this time we're starting up a different one. However, the door to the reactor itself is currently locked and we need a keycard to get to it. And as always, we have to do quite a bit of stuff before we can retrieve that keycard. So hey, seems like we're going on another journey. And even then, when we do get the keycard and finally make it to the reactor, something seems to be a little bit off this time. I don't know if it's the fact that the alarm is glitching like crazy and seems to be overlapping a lot, or if it's the really ominous and scary roar that just went off in the distance. Huh. Oh well. It's not like it's going to stop us and prevent us from completing the mission, so not like I care that much. So, let's get into the guide and start going over everything you need to know in order to beat R5D2. As always, let's start off with your loadout. For this level, I recommend you bring along with you a biotracker, a mine deployer, a C-foam launcher, and a sniper sentry. Many of the zones throughout this level are covered in pitch black darkness as well as a fair amount of fog from time to time, and these zones are going to consist of either just a lot of strikers and shooters, maybe some giant strikers, giant shooters, hybrids, as well as from time to time some shadow strikers as well as giant shadows. So having a biotracker is basically a necessity. Then when it comes to the mine deployer and the C-foam launcher, these are going to help out quite a bit during most of the alarm doors throughout the level, and it will assist you during the reactor portion itself as well. Seeing how you'll have to go through a blood door in order to get to your first code, so mine deployer helps out there. And then the second code is going to require you to go through a few rooms with a lot of powerful enemies, and you're just not given enough time to go back there, get the code, and get back before the reactor restarts. So I'll be teaching you a method that revolves around the mine deployer and C-foam launcher to make that portion a bit smoother. And then finally, when it comes to the sniper sentry, this is going to help out a lot for the very first alarm door, since everything that spawns during it will be a giant striker, giant shooter, or a hybrid, and it can help out a bit during some of the other alarm doors as well as the reactor sequence itself. Most of your tool refill on this level will be going to the mine deployer and the C-foam launcher, but if somebody brings provisions, or if you're just very conservative with your tool, you should have a fair amount left over for this sniper sentry to help out for pretty much every single portion of the level. Although if you're not bringing provisions, I would recommend you focus more of it into the mine deployer and the C-foam launcher. And then finally, I don't often talk about your weapons, but I do want to make note that in this level, you will have to deal with a lot of powerful enemies like giant strikers, giant shooters, hybrids, as well as giant shadows. So one person on your team should probably have either a sniper rifle or a hell rifle, since those are probably the two most efficient weapons when it comes to dealing with powerful enemies like that. But as long as you have one of those two on your team and everybody's a pretty good shot, or at least takes weapons that they're comfortable with, for the most part you should be good throughout this level. Dropping down into the level, you'll see that actually you won't really see much, because this level is so incredibly dark that you can't even see a few feet in front of you without your light on, so be a bit cautious when walking around. However, in the top left corner you can see that your main objective is to find the reactor and make sure it's fully online before you leave the level, and this is actually going to be the only objective for this level. You start off inside of zone 280, and not only is there pitch black darkness in the zone, but there will also be a few shadow strikers as well as some other regular enemies, so do be a bit careful of them. About halfway through the zone, you'll find a security door that leads you to zone 289, which is the way you need to go to get to the reactor. However, the security door is locked and requires a key card that will always be located inside of zone 283 in order to get into it. So we're going to have to travel further into the zone, and eventually we'll find a security door that leads us into zone 281. And this is just going to be a full team scan door. Inside of zone 281, you are going to find a fair amount of enemies, mostly comprising of giant strikers and giant shooters, as well as 2 scouts and a ton of cocoons all over the ceiling. So this is going to be a respawn zone. And from what I can tell, pretty much everything inside the zone will respawn, except for the 2 scouts. So do get rid of them, they will never come back. As for the rest of the enemies, you don't really have to get rid of them, but I would recommend you deal with most of the enemies to the west, as they can be pulled in during the alarm door over there. Speaking of that alarm door, to the far western side you'll find a security door to zone 282, and this is going to be a class 5 mixed alarm. And during this alarm, the only type of enemies that are going to spawn in are going to be giant strikers, giant shooters, as well as hybrids. Most of the time though, it will just be giant strikers. So let's look at a map overlay and talk about how you can prepare for this alarm door. As you can see, there is only one room that enemies can spawn in, and there are 2 different ways they can take to get to you. However, we want to sort of centralize all of the enemies, so we're going to leave the two southern doors open, that way almost every single enemy will go down this way. There is a very small chance that one or two of them can go to the northern door if they spawn really close to it. However, I find that this very rarely happens, and when it does, only one or two enemies come from that direction, so this funnel works for the most part. As for your tools, the only thing you really need to do is position your sniper sentry in the southern room, that way it will shoot the giants from behind as they come towards you, and make sure you position it in a place where it will have plenty of time to shoot the enemies, as it does take a few seconds for it to lock onto them. And other than that, there's not really a whole lot you need to do to prepare for this. As long as the biotracker is pinging enemies, as long as you're paying close attention to the southern end, you should be pretty good. Sniper Sentry will deal with a fair amount of the giants and greatly weaken those that it does not fully kill off, and then you can just simply shoot and kill the rest of them that do get into the room. So focus on the scans, let the Sniper Sentry do most of the work, and then once everything is dead and the scans are finished, you can head into Zone 282. Inside of Zone 282, you'll be greeted by 2 more scouts as well as a fair amount of enemies you're going to have to deal with, as well as a total of 3 more security doors, one that leads you to Zone 283, 1 to 284, and 1 to 286. Now, the security door Zone 283 is where ideally you would like to go. However, it is unpowered right now, so you're going to have to go find a power cell that will always be in either Zone 285 or 287 in order to gain access to it. So hop on a terminal and figure out which one you need to go to. If you're going to Zone 285, you are heading to the north through Zone 284. If you're going to 287 though, you're heading to the south through Zone 286. So let's talk about Zone 286 and 287 first. The security door to Zone 286 is going to be just a simple full team scan. The inside of the zone though is going to be a little bit more dangerous. There are going to be a lot of regular strikers, shooters, as well as a few hybrids sprinkled in here and there. And these rooms can either be very, open for the most part, you can deal with the enemies pretty easily, or they're going to be very dense, and it's going to be very difficult to actually silently kill everything without waking something up. And because of that, you might have to go loud in this zone. But assuming you haven't been shooting literally everything that moves up to this point, you can afford the ammunition in case some stealth kills go wrong in here and you do have to shoot some of the enemies. Just be very careful though, do not let any of the doors inside of the zone break down, because almost every single one of them is crucial for the alarm door to Zone 287. Once the enemies are all dead and you've got all the resources you need, you can then start setting up for the security door to Zone 287, as this is going to be a Class 6 cluster alarm. As you can see, there are 2 rooms that enemies can spawn in, and there are 3 doors that they can break down to get to you. So the best way to set up for this, in my opinion, is to do a half charge of the C-foam launcher on all 3 of the doors that connect to your room, and then place a mine on every single one of them. The reason you're doing half charges and not full charges is because there is a chance that only one of these doors will actually be broken down during the alarm. So you don't want to fully charge all 3 of them and then have 2 of those charges be completely wasted. So you do the half charge to buy yourself time while you're doing the full team scan. Once the full team scan's finished, the person with the C-foam launcher is going to rush to whichever door is currently being banged on. Biotracker, you can help them out with that a bit. And they're going to re-C-foam that door, and they're just going to keep applying C-foam to that door so it doesn't break down, while the other 3 people focus on the scans. However, pay attention to the next few waves that spawn in, because those next few waves might come from the same direction and bang on that same door, in which case you just keep re-C-foaming it, or they might come from a different direction and start hitting a different door. If that is the case, give the current door you're at a full charge of C-foam real quick, and then run to the other door and fully C-foam that one, and then fall back and go back to your team and help them finish the last few sets of scans. You could try to ping pong and go back and forth between 2 different doors and keep on re-C-foaming them, but in all honesty, it's very difficult to actually pull that off unless the doors are super close to each other, which they aren't really like that in this case. So have them fully C-foamed, fall back, eventually the doors will break open. When they do, the mines will deal with them, and then you're just gonna have to shoot and kill any of the other enemies that come in while you're still finishing the scans. Do be cautious, as this room is very, very dark and you will have some charges that spawn in during this alarm. So either biotracker, make sure you're pinging often, throw some glow sticks out the room if you have them, or if you don't and somebody does have a long range flashlight, they could just play lighthouse and just hold that thing the entire time while they do scans and make the room so well lit that you'll be able to shoot those chargers before they get close enough to you to attack you. But once you finish this alarm door and everything is good, you can head into Zone 287. Inside of Zone 287, you're going to find more enemies. A fair amount of them are going to be giant strikers and giant shooters, and there will be a total of 4 scouts in here, so do be very cautious of that. There is the power cell you're going to need to get to 283, as well as a fair amount of resources. I believe there is usually a total of 5 or even 6 uses of tool refill in this zone, and you're definitely going to want that for the next alarm door, so make sure you get all the resources in here you can, and then get out safely with that power cell. And once you have it, you can go into zone 282, put it into the generator, and you've unlocked the security door to zone 283. However, for those of you who have to go to zone 285 to get the cell, you head to the north to 284, which is just a full team scan like before. And the thing is, zone 284, 285 are very similar to 286, 287. So the only thing I'm actually going to talk about in this route is the alarm door to 285, because just like 287, this is a class 6 cluster alarm. However, it's a lot simpler to deal with. As you can see with the map overlay, there's only one room that enemies can spawn in. They're going to go straight through that open security door and go to that door right ahead of them and break that down to get to you. And they're not going to go into any of the side rooms, which makes this a whole lot easier to set up for, because you can do it one of two ways. You can either just keep reapplying C-foam to that door and just keep enemies out until you completely drive C-foam and then have a mine or two on it. That way it'll blow up pretty much all the enemies when they do break it down. Or if you want to hold on to C-foam and you actually want to preserve it for later, what you could do is shut that door, place a mine on it, and then place your sniper sentry near that security door outside, facing towards that door. That way, when the first initial wave spawns in, they will come in for that door, and then they'll start hitting it, and the sniper sentry will pick a few of them off. And then when the door breaks open, the mine will deal with pretty much the remainder. Then any enemy that spawns in afterwards and comes towards you will have to go into the line of sight of that sniper sentry, and a few of them will get picked off by it, and then you just have to shoot and kill the rest. The reason why you might want to do this method instead of just the perma C-foam method is due to the fact that you're given a whole lot more ammunition on this map than you are tool refill, so it might not be a bad idea to actually spend both ammo and tool on this alarm instead of spending almost nothing but tool and very little ammunition. And just like on the other sector, once you finish this alarm door, you head in, there are the 4 scouts, the enemies, resources, the power cell, everything else is the exact same. So with the power cell in hand, we can now go to the security door to zone 283 and deal with that alarm door. The alarm tied to the security door to zone 283 is going to be a class 9 mixed diminished alarm, which, yes, sounds like a whole lot, saying how, it's a class 9, it's diminished, it's mixed, there's so much to it, but trust me, it's actually not too terribly complicated, nor that difficult if you have the proper setup. So first of all, it is a diminished alarm, which means that while the waves do spawn in a little bit faster than your average alarm door, the amount of enemies per wave is a whole lot less, which makes it easier for you to actually kill a wave before the next one gets to you, and you don't have to worry about getting overwhelmed by a ton of enemies all at once. The other thing is, it is a mixed alarm. This does not mean you have to do small red scans, big reds, and clusters and stuff like that though. Instead, it's going to be a full team scan right at the beginning, and then not in this order, but in total, you're going to have to do 6 sets of 1 singular small sustain scan and 2 sets of 3 small sustain scans, which means in total, you have to do 12 sustain scans and 1 full team scan, which sounds like a whole lot, but thankfully, this room is actually quite nicely designed for this. As you can see, there are 5 different locations enemies could spawn in. Although for your average run, it's only going to be 4 because you're not going to open up both zone 284 and 286 in a regular run. So 4 different locations enemies could spawn in. And no matter which direction they come from, they have to break down at least 1 door to get to you. So to combat the enemies, we are going to mine and C-foam the 3 doors that are directly connected to our room. And then these 2 doors here in the side sectors, we're just going to shut these and mine these, no C-foam. Reason for that is because C-foam isn't going to do a whole lot good since these rooms are so small, all the enemies will very easily get to the door. And yes, while it can buy us a little bit of extra time, this is a class 9 alarm door, it's going to take a while. The idea of buying us time isn't really going to work since it's not going to be often where you actually hit the spawn cap during this alarm door, since you'll be killing enemies pretty much constantly. So just mine those, the other 3 C-foam and mine. And during the scan, if you're near a door and enemies are hitting it, you could definitely re-C-foam it a bit, but I wouldn't recommend you purposely step out of a scan just to do it, because finishing the scans first is definitely higher priority. And as for the room itself, you could take advantage of it. There are so many multiple layers in this room. You have the ground floor, then you have sort of those raised little catwalk areas that you could go, and then there's even the little catwalks up above where the doors are. So if you need to run around a bit to heal up, or naturally heal up a bit, or maybe you gotta reload or just buy yourself some distance, you definitely could. Take advantage of the stairs, the ladders, and the ramps in this room and do some crazy parkour jumps like you can probably see me doing in the background footage, depending on which footage I use, to buy yourself extra time. And then focus on the sustain scans. Once you see them, get on it. If there's a bunch of enemies already on it, deal with them first. Don't rush into the middle of them and get licked unnecessarily, but deal with them and then get on the sustain scan. Pay attention what direction they're coming from and deal with them from a little bit of a distance before they reach you. And when it comes to the 2 sets of 3 small sustain scans, if one of them appears instantly and the other 2 still have the lines going out, do the one that appears instantly. But if all 3 of them appear around the same time, pay attention to where they go. Take care of the ones that are out in the open first, and then go to the ones that are more behind cover last. That way you can deal with the harder scans first when there aren't as many enemies, and then the easier scans when you start to maybe get overwhelmed a little bit more. As long as you keep on moving, you don't accidentally shoot your teammates, and you have a little bit of HP and ammunition before you start this, you should be pretty good. And once you do finish this alarm door and all the enemies are dead, you can head into Zone 283 to start looking for the keycard you need to get to Zone 289. Now, as for Zone 283 itself, you're going to want to be very cautious because in this zone, there are going to be baby strikers, regular strikers and shooters, giant strikers, giant shooters, and there will always be 1 scout and 1 birther. And this zone only consists of 2 rooms. However, the rooms are not divided by a solid door, but just simply by an open room divider. So if you go near that and you shoot, you're waking up both rooms at once. Honestly, the best thing to do is just stealth your way through. That scout is probably the biggest threat while everything is asleep. If everything wakes up, then obviously that birther is the biggest threat. But if you can get rid of the scout and just stealth your way through, or just, completely stealth past it, you should be good. Most of the resources are in the very far back in the second room. The terminal is in the first room, I believe halfway through on the left side as you enter in, so you can use that to ping stuff. But once you go through, you collect your resources and the keycard. You could go all the way back towards the beginning of the level. Do be careful when you go through Zone 281, as that is a respawn room, and get to the security door to 289, put the keycard in, do the full team scan, and then head right on in. Zone 289 is the classic type of long connector corridor zone that you get right before a reactor. In here, there will be some resources as well as a few enemies you could deal with. And at the end of it, you'll find a security door that leads you into Zone 290, and this is just going to be a full team scan. Inside of 290, you're going to finally find your reactor terminal as you have arrived to the reactor room. Pretty cool looking one, by the way, if I do say so myself. And you'll find 2 more security doors. One to the north, which leads you to Zone 291, which is going to be a blood door. Go on ahead and mine this now instead of later, just because you can. And then you'll find one to the east, which leads you to Zone 283. However, 291 and 293 are both under lockdown now, so all you can really do at this point is restock a bit, get your resources in order, and then get ready for the reactor sequence itself. Now that we have finally made it to the reactor itself, it's time to get down to business and do what we came here to do in the first place. This reactor will have a total of 4 codes, 3 of which you're going to have to go out and find, the 4th one being given to you for free. And these codes are actually not too terribly difficult to get, assuming you have a proper strategy and you know what you're doing in advance, and even defending against a wave of enemies isn't all that hard. So once your team has distributed the resources best they like, initiate the command on the terminal, do the full team scan, and then head out to the bridge to defend against the first wave of enemies. Wave 1 out of 4 is going to consist of nothing but strikers, shooters, as well as a few hybrids towards the end of the wave. Once you have finished this wave, you can head north of the reactor room to the blood door that leads you into Zone 291, where you'll be able to find your first code. This blood door will spawn in nothing but shadows, so do be a bit cautious of it, but one well-placed mine as well as a biotracker ping, and it should be smooth sailing. Inside of Zone 295, it is a very long zone that just extends very far to the north and will have very few enemies inside of it, although the enemies that do spawn inside of it will be nothing but regular shadows or shadow giants. So make sure you're going forward, you're rushing it a little bit, you don't have a whole lot of time to spend getting this code. Biotracker warn your team when you see enemies, but for the most part, you can just go guns blazing. Towards the northern end of it, you'll find your first terminal. If this is not the correct one, just head to the northeast a little bit, go through that door and just head straight north, and you'll find your second one a little bit to the left of you. And one of these 2 will always have your code on it. With the code, you can collect any resources with the extra time you have, then head back to the reactor, put the code in, and initiate wave 2 out of 4. The second reactor wave is quite similar to the first, the only difference is really being that there will be some giant strikers thrown into the mix, and that the total time that you have to defend for is a little bit less. So if you were able to handle the first wave no problem, second wave shouldn't be that much of an issue either. When you finish defending against this wave and the timer hits 0, you'll be told to head to Zone 292 to get your second code, and the security door to Zone 292 can be found to the right of you upon entering into Zone 291. However, you may notice that you're not really given a whole lot of time to actually go get this code and get back. And really, that is how it is. You're expected to fail at least once when it comes to this code, which isn't a big deal. It just means we have to adapt and change our plan a little bit. So what we're going to do is a 4-man rush. Once you finish off all the enemies from the second wave, you're going to rush to the zone 292, go into the first room, just shoot anything that might be in there. The enemies that can be inside zone 9 or 292 are going to consist of strikers, shooters, giant strikers, and giant shooters. I think you can also get a few shadows or hybrids in here as well, although I think they're a little bit on the rarer side since I haven't seen them in every single run. So you're just going to go guns blazing throughout this entire zone. When you clear out a room, you're going to shut the previous door behind you, and then you're going to mine and C-foam it. You want to do this to the first 2, potentially even 3 doors inside of this zone, depending on how quick you and your team are. That way, when you get back to the terminal and you get that code and you start making your way back, the reactor wave from, when the reactor restarts, those enemies will finally start catching up. They'll start banging down on those doors. They'll break all the C-foam off. They'll break down the door. A decent amount of them will pile up on it because of the C-foam. And then the mine will deal with most, if not every single enemy that's currently at the door. Then the second door could deal with a few of the remainders. And then at that point, you should be able to meet up with the wave, kill any of the enemies that are directly in front of you, and get to that terminal. This can be a little bit situational because it really depends on how much time you have left to get back to the terminal. But if need be, maybe one person can make a mad dash to it to make sure they get in time. If not, it's not a big deal. You should have enough resources at this point to just clear all the enemies all the way back to the reactor slowly, and then just simply hold out against the second wave again on the bridge, and then put the code in. That way you can start initiating the third wave. Wave 3 out of 4 is a little bit of an oddball compared to the first 2. The defense time for the wave is only about 20 seconds, and the only enemies that will spawn in per reactor wave is going to be about 7 regular strikers and shooters and 1 hybrid. There's so few enemies that you could honestly just melee kill the entire wave, assuming your team is comfortable doing that. So where's the challenge in it? Well, remember that zone that was to the east of the respawn zone? 288, the one across the foggy bridge that had the lockdown on it? Yeah, that's where you need to go. So my recommendation is once you put in the second code, rush across the reactor bridge, get to the security door where you had to put the key in. That's approximately where you'll run into the third wave. Deal with them there, and then you have about a minute before the next wave spawns in. So take advantage of that time, go into zone 281, clear out the enemies in the first room, get into the second room, and just pull that room. If you don't pull them now, then there is a pretty good chance that they will get pulled in while you're defending inside zone 288, and there are quite a few giants in here, so it's best to just deal with them now. Pull the room, make sure you stay in A, do not completely leave zone 281, otherwise it will respawn everything in there once you kill them, and then once there's safe passage, go to the eastern side, go across the foggy bridge, and get to the security door to 288. This is just going to be a one-person scan to get into it, but be careful. Zone 288 will have nothing but chargers, giant chargers, and a single charger scout inside of it, and room A can have any of those guys in there. So the last thing you want to do is open up room A as the second reactor wave is reaching you, and then you either have to actually melee kill the entire reactor wave, or if you shoot, you're going to pull in anything that's in room A of 288. So wait, maybe kill another wave if you're a little bit behind time, or if you do have enough time, get into A and kill everything in there as fast as you can. Around this time, you definitely should begin that second wave reaching you, so all 4 of you can work together to deal with them. And then once all the enemies are dead, you're gonna open up that big door that's right in room A, not the small one that's to the north, but the big one to the east of you. Open that up, and one person's gonna go in, and you're gonna shut the door behind you. In this room, you are going to find a lot of enemies. Worst case scenario, you have maybe like 6 or so giant chargers in here, as well as the charger scout and a few regular chargers. But in here also, there will be the 2 terminals, that one of which will have your code on. So one person is going to stealth through here best they can, make sure you do not wake up anything in here whatsoever, and the other 3 people are going to wait outside, and they're going to defend against any more reactor waves that spawn in. Once your solo person gets that code and gets towards that door, you're going to want to wait until you have killed the current reactor wave. That way nobody accidentally shoots when the door opens. Once the enemies are dead, open up the door for your friend. That way he can come out, shut the door behind you, and then just book it. Get all the way back to the reactor as fast as you can. And once you get back to the reactor, you're going to want to put that third code in. You might not be able to put it in right away. You might have to wait for another wave and you'll have to kill all of them. But if that's the case, it's no big deal. Like I said, it's only a few enemies in one hybrid, so even if you run completely out of ammo, you could just melee kill it. But once you get the third code in, you are now onto the 4th wave of the reactor sequence. Once you put that third code in, the reactor is going to go a bit crazy. It's going to make a lot of noise, things are going to derp out quite a bit, and you're going to see a lot of text appear on the left side of your screen. The warden telling you stuff like, hold up one moment, I'm going to send you the verification code, the reactor is malfunctioning, critical temperatures, things are going wrong, and after a little bit, it is going to initiate a 4th wave. However, this fourth wave is only going to last for I think about 10 or 15 seconds, something like that, and it'll feel like nothing spawns in. And then at the end of it, you'll be given your fourth and final reactor code for free, and it'll give you about 10 minutes to put it in. Why it's 10 minutes, I honestly have no idea. They could have just given you 1 or even 2 minutes and it would have been perfectly fine. But hey, you get 10 minutes to put it in. And once you put it in, you'll get more text on screen saying that the reactor sequence is finished and that the sector is lost and you need to run as fast as you can. Your extraction scan will now appear, although it's not going to appear at the beginning of the level, and rather it's going to appear in zone 285. And the security door to the east of you that leads to zone 283 is going to automatically open up in just a few seconds. However, things are not quite as simple as it may seem. That fourth reactor wave did actually spawn something in, or I should say it is about to spawn something in. There's a bit of a delay to it, but that fourth wave will spawn in 3 tanks, and they are going to be coming in after you really quickly, which is why the warden is telling you to run as fast as you can. So you could do one of two things. You can either stay and fight and kill those tanks in the reactor room, or maybe inside of zone 280 or 293 like a lot of people like to, or you could just simply run for it and get to extraction as fast as you possibly can. If you are just going to stay and fight, use the reactor room. It is quite nice, there's a lot of stuff to block line of sight. However, if you want to just get to extraction scan and get out, run through zone 293, just keep going to the east and just going through the doors. You'll find a lot of C-foam grenades and C-foam trip mines in this zone that you can actually use to buy yourself more time on the doors. There will be a few regular chargers as well, but I think there's only somewhere between 2 to 4 of them inside of 293 and 294. So it's really not that hard. Just run through, guns blazing, get through the doors, shut them behind you to buy yourself more time. To the eastern side of 293, you'll find a security door at 294, which is just a full team scan. Once you finish that, you're going to go into 294, head to the north until you get to the wall, then head straight east, and then once you go through 2 doors, you'll be in an open room. Head towards the south and you'll find your security door that leads you into zone 295. This as well is just going to be a full team scan. If you are running from the tanks around this point, they should finally start catching up to you, but there's no issue. They really don't come up that staircase in the first place to attack you, they sort of just stand down below awkwardly. So once you finish the full team scan to 295, you can head right on in and really just have one person go in and get on that scan. The other 3 people just sort of stand outside to make sure the tanks don't actually rush into 295 with you. This is a silent extraction, so no additional enemies will spawn in, so once you get it up to 100%, you are done with that level and you have beaten R5D2. And that's all there really is to it. As always, if you have any tips or tricks for this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or just have something in general that you want to say, leave it down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, then consider hitting that like button. It helps out the channel and it helps these videos get noticed by people who really need them. Although I would be curious if anybody really needs a D2 guide with how long R5's been out for. The like is still appreciated nonetheless. And heck, while you're down there, you might as well hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to get notified whenever I post a new video. I also have my own Discord server, so if you want to become part of the community I'm building, hop on in. Link is down in the description. Until next time, make sure you get your snacks and popcorn ready, because the next video is going to be the not only long overdue but long awaited for R5E1 completion of mine, and as some of you may already know, it's going to be quite different and quite the wild ride. So, I'll see you all in the next video.